Let me. Welcome back to He's a Giant, a pod about all things college football and all things Giants football. I'm your host, Sal, here with my co-host, Monty. What's going on, man?
What's going on, dude? Yeah, after a week off, a lot of Giants news kind of happened in that meantime. And, we have an eventful episode here with, probably our most anticipated position group in very likely, at least first 2-round pick for the New York Giants with the wide receiver. So should be a fun episode, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been waiting on this one for a while now because we feel like this is probably going to be, if not the position that the Giants target, early in the draft, one of maybe 2 or 3 spots. But it became glaringly obvious throughout the season that the Giants badly needed weapons, specifically in the wide receiver room. Watching Malik Neighbors, and we needed one before Malik Neighbors went down, but watching him go down just, made things so bad. And I think it would behoove the Giants to make sure they went ahead and got somebody to shore up this room. And you have the luxury of having Scattaboo and Neighbors already. You have Dart. You got to add some weapons. So this episode is going to be all about finding that guy. Hold on one second. This episode is brought to you by Celsius, the unofficial official drink of the Giants. Although not for long, Celsius. If you don't step up to the plate and officially sponsor us, Monty has threatened to go to Alani. So
there you go.
Until he does, though, Celsius Sparkling Grape is the official drink of He's a Giant pod. But before we go to the stuff with the wide receivers, man, we haven't had, like you said, we didn't have an episode last week. I was traveling, but an eventful time to not have an episode.
Yes,
the Giants blew another game in Chicago, and Brian Daboll got fired. I know everybody's kind of been through it already, but give me your quick thoughts on it after having been able to digest it the last week or so.
Yeah, man. I mean, look, I was a supporter of wanting to keep Daboll around to the end of the season for the best of Dart's development and then let him go at the end of the season. The one caveat that you and I discussed, well, at least multiple times together, I don't know if we discussed on the show, but you and I certainly discussed it, was if Dart got hurt doing the shit that he's doing with it, that's like fair grounds for him to get fired for. And you could see it coming, and it eventually happened. So, Dart going down with the concussion, getting checked back into the game with the concussion, and then blowing another lead. You heard rumors that apparently they were considering firing Daboll or almost fired Daboll after the Denver game. If there was any truth to those rumors, it was pretty obvious that this would probably be the thing that put him over the top, and it was. And it's hard to defend Brian Daboll in this situation. I think it was a warranted firing.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all knew it was sort of on the verge of happening for a while now, with the team just mounting losses, loss after loss, especially the way they were losing the games. Right? We talked about how can Daboll save his job even if they don't have a winning record. And a lot of us, myself included. So if they lose, but they are playing really good football, if they look like a well-coached team and they're just losing because maybe they're just not quite there yet in terms of talent or what it may be. But I think, that even that would be a tall task, but losing the way they did is something I don't think we necessarily thought would be in the cards, with the quarterback play being so good, Jackson Dart being such a big hit, putting up 25 to 30 points a week with Jackson Dart, and losing games because your defense is just collapsing week after week after week down this, in game after game, team looking undisciplined. There was no saving Daboll. So it is what it is. He deserved to get fired. You feel bad for anybody who does get fired, but at the end of the day, like, the man earned it with his collective record as head coach. They go on to Mike Kafka, and he had his first game against the Packers. I thought they looked better. I thought they looked. I mean, it wasn't that different.
It looks better,
right? I think on offense, with Jameis and not with Dart, who was out with a concussion, they were able to muster a pretty good blocking scheme, which it looked distinctly nuanced compared to prior weeks to me.
A lot of inside zone, a lot of pulling,
a lot of gap runs, inside zone, pull blocks. There was a lot of stuff that we just hadn't seen regularly with Brian Daboll, and looked like Mike Kafka reached into his bag of, run plays and pull that stuff out. And it really helped. And I liked his philosophy. It seemed very clear, right? In the last game against the Packers, you're outgunned against the Packers. So what do? You just run the ball. You run the ball. I think they ran it 37 times, something like that. I mean, just keep the ball on the ground and commit to the run and try to control the clock and play a tight game. And I think for the most part, he did a pretty good job of that. The Giants had the lead again late. You know, I don't know what else to say there. What else to say? I mean, it's just the story of the season. So I like what Kafka did. I don't want to go too much into this Abdul Carter, undisciplined stuff, that everybody's talking about, the scatteraboo. I think what's happening right now, though, is I think everybody's piling on because the team is in shambles. And
Agreed.
The stories of them being an undisciplined unit are just coming out. And quite frankly, some of it is a little bit of overkill. I think the Carter stuff, fine, they mentioned it. I don't think there's a real problem with Abdul Carter at all. But quite frankly, Monty, I welcome it at this point, because the other part of this is the more chaos there is, unfortunately, the more it sheds light on the organizational structure from top to bottom. And if they're really planning on sticking with Joe Schoen, I think that stuff has to come to light.
Yeah, I mean, that's the shitty part, man, because, I didn't really give a fuck if we won or we lost last Sunday. I'll be honest with you. Without Jackson Dart on the field, it didn't mean much to me. But with Jackson Dart on the field, I want to root for this team to win. I want to see Jackson Dart prove that he can, change the culture here. But it sucks because, it's a double-edged sword where if you want Joe Schoen gone, this team needs to be embarrassed. And, it sucks. I'm so tired of rooting for this team to get embarrassed, and I don't think I can do it, to be honest.
I'm not rooting for it.
I can't do it again.
But they manage to embarrass themselves, whether you root for it or not, unfortunately, and they do it on a regular basis. And that's gonna be the story of the season until it's not. So they're heading towards whatever. I mean, it looks like it's maybe a 4 or 5 win season at best at this point. Maybe less. We'll see. But the other part of the story, Joe Schoen stays, and the initial reports are that he is going to not only stay, but that the ownership group is happy with him and the team, the nucleus he's assembled.
The technology, Sal.
The computers that he installed, as opposed to the magnets and the Wii controller. And that he's going to lead the search for a new head coach. And everybody got upset, and everybody was really just not happy, rightfully so. And then Ian O'Connor, we're going back a week here, says not so fast. He may not be safe. They're going to reassess him at the end of the season. Then Jay Glazer comes out with his report and gives a list of names, which had most people in Giants world nauseous, except for one of those names, really, to be honest.
Yeah,
we should talk about that one. But when he was asked about Joe Schoen, he's like, yeah, he's fine. He's leading the search. I don't know if you heard Ryan Dunleavy on Talking Giants yesterday, but he said kind of the same thing. Yes, he will be leading the search, but I don't think anybody is very confident that he is going to complete the search or that he's going to survive this. I mean, I think we have to assume he's the GM until proven otherwise, obviously. But I think there's enough noise coming out that his future is not exactly set in stone. And I have a theory on that, but I want to hear your thoughts on it too.
I mean, I'm worried, man. I know that, Jay Glazer didn't necessarily say he said kind of what we've been hearing with he's, he'll be there. He's leading the search. I don't know, just the way he said it made me nervous because Jay Glazer is very, very tuned into all this. His list made me nervous. Talked to Joe Schoen, so that list is directly from Joe Schoen. That stuff makes me nervous. I do think that there's a world that Joe Schoen is still fired, but I think between John Mara's cancer and them not really wanting to make organizational changes and just GMs being able to not even just here but league wide find a way to stick around. GMs are like the cockroaches of this league. The head coaches take the blame and they find ways to hang on. That makes me nervous.
Yeah, no, I totally understand why you would feel like that. But, to be frank, when you do fire a GM mid-season, you're turning over a lot of things, I think, administratively that fans don't necessarily think about and appreciate, which is just the day-to-day operations of running the team. And that might be something you don't want to do, right? Like what's the value in that? Put it that way. Or what's your actual value? You're already 2-8 at that point, now 2-9. You're going to have to fire a bunch of people along with him, people who are going to have to be promoted from within to take on multiple roles. It can be a little chaotic. And I think, especially with John Mara's health issue, does ownership really want that mid-season, right? I mean, it's not a good process. It's a very chaotic process. So I'm not 100% sure that there you go, D-Kid. There's your answer. I told you we couldn't do it. But I'm not 100% sure that, that's not part of the reason that he's sticking. But here's my thing. My theory on this, Monty, is that all these reports we're getting about him being safe for now, I really kind of, with all the stuff we've heard about ownership, John Mara's health, my theory of this is that there's a lot going on up top in the Giants drive in terms of, things like who's running the show today versus who might run it if John Mara can't do it, succession planning, who's in charge, who takes over in football operations, what do the Tishes have to say about it? This is all theory, of course, right? But you're starting to get the impression that there's a lot unsettled at the top, and that how that process plays out, I think, will have a big impact on whether or not Joe Schoen is retained going forward. And quite frankly, if there's a lot of, I don't want to use the word chaos, but a lot of uncertainty at the top right now, does it make a ton of sense to change GMs in the middle of the season? I think sometimes you just want somebody to handle the football operations while you sort things out. So there's a lot happening, but ultimately, I think a lot of this is going to depend on what happens with ownership structure and who's head of football operations when all is said and done. If John Mara cannot continue to be that person, and a lot of it's going to come down to the head coaches, right? Like the candidates that come in are going to have a say in this, whether people want to believe it or not. Ownership will interview these candidates separately and individually from Joe Schoen. And a logical question would be, what do you think of Joe Schoen? Right? What kind of, how do you feel about working with him? Give me an assessment of our roster. You don't have to say, do you like him or not? But there are indirect ways to ask the same question that I think are logical to ask candidates. And I think ownership is going to get feedback on that. So there are a lot of things that can still affect his fate, in my opinion.
Yeah, man. I think the Joe Schoen thing will be something to monitor. It's going to be a talking point for the rest of the season. I think the good thing about firing Brian Daboll now is it now puts the focus on Joe Schoen. There's no more scapegoat. We have the rest of the season where all the attention will be on Joe Schoen and if he deserves to stay. There's already a lot of backlash around the league, like why the hell are the Giants doing this? So we'll see. I get, before we get into wide receivers and stuff like that, all right, let's talk a little bit about the Jay Glazer list, and let's kind of talk a little bit about where we think this coaching search should and could go.
Yeah, so Jay Glazer, anybody who's doubting the Jay Glazer report, D-Kit and I got into a big argument about this, and I love D-Kit. But my view on this is that Jay Glazer generally is releasing information with permission from somebody, and he's as accurate as they get with most of these reports, especially with the Giants. So I'm inclined to believe that whether it was Joe Schoen or some other very high up source with the Giants, the names he released are names he heard as actual candidates for the job today. That doesn't mean that's the final list. It doesn't mean those guys are definitely going to even be candidates when all is said and done. But I think those are definitely names he heard in some manner. I'll put it that way. So he mentioned that let's talk about what he actually said. He said there are two schools of thought here. One school is get a coach that will develop Jackson Dart, and that would be the primary what you're looking for primarily in a head coaching candidate. And the other school of thought is to get a CEO type with experience to run this entire organization. Then he started listing the names. Mike McCarthy, former head coach of the Cowboys and the Packers, Super Bowl winner.
We expected
great record. Yeah. Super Bowl champion. Really an outstanding career record, consistently a 10 to 12 game winner year after year after year. And I think there are people who are big proponents of McCarthy because they feel like he is a high floor guy. that he is a stabilizing force, an experienced coach who knows how to win. It's hard to argue with a lot of that stuff, but the arguments I have are very simple. If you're basing your desire to have McCarthy here on things like his win-loss record, you cannot you cannot then separate out the fact that his entire career worked with a guy who will go down in history as a top 5 quarterback in the history of the NFL, playing in his prime, winning 4 MVPs during that period. And another guy who is essentially a perennial MVP candidate quarterback while he led him.
With the top 5 most talented roster in the NFL during those 3 years, probably.
And a top 5 offensive line unit during that entire time. So he had a good infrastructure. That's not to take anything away from him, but if you're going to talk to me about wins and losses as the reason you like a guy, you have to factor in the biggest thing that actually affects wins and losses, which is really QB play.
And one thing I'll say too, like, look, if you like Mike McCarthy, if you do your work, you're like, hey, I think he's a good leader. I think that he's been a good coach. Not that you can't bring up the wins and losses. Certainly that's part of it. You like his scheme. You like who he brings in. All that, cool. But the one thing, but I will say, like, there is nuance to this beyond the win and loss record. And, if you're just going to sit here and tell me that's all that matters, and hell, why isn't every Giants fan on bringing in Bill Belichick, the greatest coach to ever coach the game, was on track to maybe having the most wins to ever by a coach that's won the most Super Bowls by any head coach. If resume is what we're looking for, bring in Bill Belichick. But I think we all kind of understand that there's more to that, and that coaches do age out of the NFL, and that things change. So again, I'm not to say that you shouldn't like McCarthy. I'm just saying that, like, there's more to it beyond the resume.
Yeah, no, I agree. Now, in terms of just to understand who McCarthy is, he's an older coach, obviously. It's worth mentioning very briefly. I don't want to spend too much time on it, but this is a guy who came in to the league in the 90s. He broke in with the Chiefs under Marty Schottenheimer. He was a QB coach for Joe Montana on the Chiefs towards the end of his career. And then he worked with Mike Shanahan, I believe. With Mike Holmgren. If I'm not mistaken.
Correct.
Andy Green Bay. Holmgren was from the Bill Walsh tree. And then eventually found his way to the Packers, bounced around a little bit as an offensive coordinator with the Saints and then the Niners. And then he found his way to the Packers back in 2006 as a head coach and stayed there from 2018 to 2018. I mean, he runs a very kind of original, simplified version of the West Coast passing system, that from the 90s. I don't think it's evolved a lot in his game, but he's a good coach. I'm not going to take anything away from him as being a solid coach, but there were issues with him. The negatives are things like his teams consistently would flop towards the end of the season. They would struggle in the playoffs. He had a lot of bad game situation management, especially clock management in big games. There were issues with discipline. His team, many of his players kind of quit on him. The Dallas defense was ready to have a mutiny on him. Remember, they were like ready to just go with Dan Quinn and get this guy fired. I mean, there were issues with his tenure in Dallas despite the winning. So again, if you're going to name him, you have to go through all of this stuff. But he's out there, and he's a guy that I'm sure they will look at.
There's certainly worse names we're going to talk about here than Mike McCarthy. Certainly worse names.
Exactly. The next name would be that was mentioned was Matt Nagy. Now, Nagy is currently the OC on the Chiefs. He was previously on the Chiefs, and in between, he was with the Bears as their head coach during the Mitch Trubisky era. He did go to the playoffs twice. But
one time 8-8.
Right. But he was largely brought in to revolutionize the offense and get something out of Mitch Trubisky on an elite defense. And that was the Khalil Mack defense that they had in those days, and really struggled, and was kind of flamed out with his final year being the Justin Fields rookie year. Didn't have the most illustrious tenure as head coach. Now he's back with the Chiefs, not calling plays. Doesn't excite me. I'd be surprised if he's the guy who got the job, but he's on the list because he was a previous head coach. That's all there is to say.
Coach of the year.
That happens, right? The next name was Arthur Smith. I definitely don't want to spend any time talking about Arthur Smith. He's a terrible coach. Guy who was awful with the Falcons. Now he's OC on the Steelers. His one good year as a coach, if I recall, with the quarterback was with Ryan Tannehill when he had a resurgent year in Tennessee. That's kind of it. I think that was that with Jeff Fisher? I forgot. Or was that?
That was with Vrabel.
Was Vrabel there then? Okay, yeah. I mean, not an inspiring candidate. I'll put it that way. A very arrogant kind of guy, very my way or the highway with offensive scheme, not adaptable to players. Don't want any part of him personally. The next name on the list, let me see. Those were 3 head coaches.
Spags.
Yeah, so Spags, of course, we all know Spags. We love Spags for his time as DC here. Flamed out terribly as a head coach with the Rams. Had a bad roster, but did not do well with it. Had a horrific record. Getting older now, and like you want 65-year-old Spags finally get another crack at this. I personally don't. I know a lot of people love Spags, but I'd rather not. I'd rather find the next Spags if that's what you're looking for.
There's a lot of good defensive minds out there.
Exactly. He threw out Lou Anarumo. This is Monty's personal favorite candidate. Lou Anarumo is currently the DC for the Colts. He was previously the DC for the Bengals. He's a good defensive coordinator, and he's interviewed for the Giants job before. His son is a scout for the Giants. He has ties to the area. He's from Staten Island, if I'm not mistaken. Good candidate in many ways as a defensive coordinator. I have no idea what kind of a head coach this man will be, but he'll definitely get an interview. And then he threw out at the very end the most interesting name in the whole list. And he says, keep an eye out for this guy. And he mentions the defensive coordinator for the Rams, Chris Shula. And that's the one name where I was getting nauseous watching the whole segment. And then he says Chris Shula. And I'm thinking, it's one of those segments like, which one of these things is not like the other?
Yeah.
Boy, did he stick out like a sore thumb in those names. And I'm like, Chris Shula. Why are you mentioning him in this? Because that's a name I'd really like to be interested in, And so Chris Shula is the DC for the Rams right now, and he's got that defense playing like incredible football right now.
Yeah,
doing a great job. He was Sean McVay's college roommate. Came up with him, has been with him this whole time for years in the Rams. I think he joined the Rams at the same time as McVay, if I'm not mistaken, and kind of worked his way up. He was an assistant with Raheem Morris when Raheem Morris was DC the year they won the Super Bowl in 21, and worked his way up. Interesting, exciting name. He is the nephew of former Giants offensive coordinator Mike Shula and the grandson of Hall of Fame coach Don Shula. So let's talk about Chris Shula because I think he's worthy of discussion.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, that's the one that stood out because, like, look, if there is going to be a non-experienced guy, to me, I would have expected like a Kubiak. It's like they mentioned, like, getting dart ready. This guy doesn't really fit either. He's not the CEO experienced coach, and he's not really the offensive mind to develop dart. But he's a hell of a candidate. He's a very, very interesting candidate to bring up. What Jay Glazer mentioned is, there's a little bit of a difference between Shula and some of these other guys who came through the Rams. And that's that Shula is literally Sean McVay's best friend. They played college football together. They came in like the same time over there. He brought them to the Rams with him. They both come from football families. They bonded over a lot. I was reading a whole article on this, and they're very, very close. And Glazer mentioned that he lets him in on some stuff that he hasn't let other coaches in on. And that's the interesting thing about him. And if you look at his success this year, I mean, their defense is playing at an insane level. And, they mentioned it. There's only 2 first-round picks. One of those being Emmanuel Forbes, who they got off the scrap pile from Washington. I'm going to read you I'm on PFF. I'm going to read you kind of what's happening right now. So the points against, they are second best in the NFL. Their defensive grade by PFF is second. The run defensive grade is second. Their tackling is second. Their pass rush is 7th. And their coverage is first. So they are across the board, like just grading out as an extremely good defense. You would most certainly bring a Sean McVay offensive guy with him to help develop Dart. Really, really interesting candidate. I like the bloodlines of like football with him. You kind of run with a lot of these guys have that. The Jesse Minter has some of that. Kubiak has that, but it's an interesting name, and to me, these are the type of people you should at the very least be interviewing. This is what pissed me off about most of that list is that he prefaced it like, oh, they're not going to have this big search of 25 candidates. They have a type here. It's like, dude, like going over like what Dan Duggan put a tweet like a week ago or so about all the players all the coaches since 2016 that we haven't even interviewed. Like, that's where you've messed up. You're not even interviewing the good coaches. So cast a wide net. Guys like Chris Shula are a great person to be in that wide net. Learn from them or fall in love and hire them as your coach. But at the very least, you're going to learn a lot from them, bringing them. So I'm all in on interviewing Shula. I've heard his name as well, aside from Glazer, as somebody the Giants are interested in. So I would definitely keep your eyes on Chris Shula right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's a name that was so different than all the others in terms of the type of guys that Glazer was talking about, that it makes you feel like they have their eyes set on him, and hopefully there is some interest level there. A guy we didn't mention because he wasn't mentioned by Glazer, but I have zero doubt he will interview here, who I think ultimately will end up being the head coach of the Giants personally, is Jeff Hafley, the defensive coordinator for the Packers. Now, unless the Giants are dead set on, I need somebody who's been an NFL head coach before, which I guess that could still be the case. Unless they're dead set on that, if they actually even cast a remotely, diverse net to get candidates, Hafley is the guy that I think will absolutely wow them. I mean, you heard him in the lead up to the game with the Packers talking to the media. He's a Jersey guy. He's talking about how he grew up a Giants fan. His family's a bunch of Giants fans, going to Giants Stadium as a kid. He was head coach at Boston College for years. He was at Rutgers. He trained under Schiano. Then he goes off, to BC. Then he's trained under Shanahan, as a defensive coach. He's trained under LaFleur. I mean, the guy has coached some really good coaches over the years. Talks like a coach. Sounds like a head coach. Sounds like he's ready for the moment. Highly respected in Green Bay, obviously. With all of his pedigree, the BC connections, I just have a hard time believing that if that man walks in with as polished as he seems as a potential candidate, that he doesn't walk out with an offer to be head coach. I just feel like if there's any one candidate I would peg to be able to be that guy to win the job during the interview, it's him. He wasn't mentioned by Glazer, but then again, Glazer was giving his report the day the Giants were playing the Packers. And I'd be shocked, absolutely shocked, if he wasn't a candidate and a serious candidate for the job. So I think that's one to definitely watch. Everybody's talked about him, but I still think in my mind, he's the most likely person to come out of this field.
Yeah, I mean, he's a super interesting candidate. He's coached some really, really good defenses in Green Bay over the last couple of years. One of the best coverage teams in the NFL this year. And if you look at that secondary, I know they have a really good front seven, but that secondary outside of Xavier and McKinney really doesn't have names. And, they're getting by and really, really thriving. He came from that, like, he runs that Salah-like defense that we know has had a lot of success in the NFL. So he speaks well. He has some coaching experience. It was just at the college level, and it was at a smaller program in BC. But that smaller program in BC means a lot to the New York Giants, the school that John Mara went to, as a school that Chris Mara went to, school that Tom Coughlin coached at.
Chris Snee went to, Tom Coughlin's son-in-law. That's where John Mara, all of his children went to.
Chris Snee worked with Hafley.
Right. John Mara's 4 daughters all went to BC. John Mara's 4 daughters all married men from BC. Like, it's a very, very BC Jesuit family. And I mean, he's part of that. He comes from that culture. He's in a lot, I have a hard time believing that they're not having dinner together, on the night of the interview and talking about their ties and, and BC and stuff. So anyway, he's worth mentioning. And I think he's one of those guys I want to see get a real good shot at this. And I think he will. to me, the bottom line, though, is what I said at the beginning, Monty, which is I think there's a lot up in the air. And this has to do with John Mara's health, obviously, and what happens afterwards. And I think we're going to do an episode when we're done with all of our position reviews about the future of the team and a lot of the aspects of this, all of these dynamics that we believe are in play. But I do think that there's a bit of a power dynamic happening right now. I think we're hearing enough rumblings about that it seems real. And because of that uncertainty about who's going to be here and running things, we just don't know what's going to happen with Joe Schoen. We don't know what's going to happen with his head coaching search. But I kind of feel like the head coaching search and the candidates are going to dictate a lot of what happens in the front office. I do suspect that's going to happen here.
Yeah. And the one other thing I'll say about Hafley before we move on that, obviously we talked about why Coughlin would like him. We talked about why he's, a good defensive coach, but also say like one thing that excites me about him is trees he comes from and the type of offensive staff he would most likely bring to this team. Is a guy who's worked with Kyle Shanahan. He's a guy that's worked with UC working right now with Matt LaFleur. He's a guy who's worked with Kevin O'Connell in the past. There's a lot of good coaches that come from those trees offensively. That's a big part of the battle is being able to get somebody to coach the other side of the ball for you. And I do think that's something he'd be able to do.
Yep. All right. We're about 30 minutes into this sucker. You want to jump into these receivers?
Yeah, let's go ahead and just jump into this.
All right. So, guys, again, this is kind of like, if you remember our quarterback episode from 2 years ago, which was still to date our biggest episode, right after Daniel Jones tore his ACL, we broke it into 2 episodes. We usually do that with quarterbacks. This year, we have a quarterback, and there are a lot of good wide receivers in this class. So Monty and I have decided to break this into 2 episodes, just so you know. We're going to do 5 receivers today, 5 next week. And actually not specifically like 1 to 5 type order. We picked, our first 5 to go over. And these are guys who are going to be in first round talks, maybe early second round type talks. But these are going to be, premium candidates at the receiver position to look for. And I will tell you that they're not going to necessarily grade out exactly how you might have guessed coming into this episode. And they're not going to grade out necessarily how we even like them, to be totally honest. But the grading scale is the grading scale. We're sticking with it, and we're going to grade it and just see how the chips fall. But we're going to discuss them in the order of how they graded out for us. So based on how they graded out, I'm going to let you start this one off, Monty, because I think you were a big fan of the guy who graded out number 1 for us overall.
He certainly had the highest grade for me.
Yep. And I wasn't too far behind you.
No.
Because he grades out as he's such a good fucking receiver. Like I think he's worth discussing. Yeah, so why don't you kick us off with the first guy we'll go over today?
Yep. So the first guy I don't think will come to surprise anybody. There's a few guys here that could have an argument for number 1. But we're going to start out here with Carnell Tate from Ohio State. This is a guy 6'3", 195 pounds. Ohio State constantly is putting out these great wide receivers into the NFL. And, big part of their coach there, Brian Hartline, who coaches the shit out of these guys. These guys come in so polished, and you can clearly see that on tape with Carnell Tate. So I'm going to get into some of what I had on here. I thought he was a very physical football player. I thought, first things I noticed is that he is very, very good in the run game. He's a physical player who sustains blocks downfield. And then as a receiver, I thought he tempoed his routes well, changing speed to manipulate defenders. He'll use the stab step when he gets that wide receiver one-on-one, kind of get him leaning one way, change his speed and blow by him. I saw that a few times there. He maintains his momentum and fluidity throughout his routes. He might not be the sharpest cutter of all the guys we're going to talk about, but he's a very, very fluid player who holds his speed. I remember that being a comment we talked about when we talked about Malik Neighbors way back in the day, is that he's the guy who, when he goes through his routes, he can, kind of just like round through them. He's fluid and it almost looks like he's getting faster through it. There's a little bit of that to Carnell Tate's game. Really, really reliable hands, consistently catches really everything throws his way, and he plays through contact to win balls in tight windows. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you can see that his contested catch rate is 92.3% and his drop rate is 0. Some of the best hands really I've ever seen come out of the NFL draft. Very, very good hands. Competes every single play. He never takes a play off. I see him doing the running through routes, blocking. I saw a fumble where he gets out, runs after the guy and lays him out. Like, he's a guy who's always going to give you 100%. I thought he displayed sudden, precise footwork at the line and in his route stems. Displays strong ball tracking skills, consistently locating the ball in the air, and attacks the football in the air with excellent timing and body awareness. Some of the cons I had on him, like I said, he's fluid, but he can't snap sideways as quickly as some of these other elite route runners. Like, I think he's a very good route runner, but I think he's limited to what some of these other guys can do. His change of direction ability just isn't the same. Like, he can be fluid and he can flip his hips decently well, but if he's got to stop and go, it kind of looks clunky. If he's got to totally 180 degrees change direction, it just takes some time to slow down and make that turn. So I wish he was a little bit more athletic there. It's not always crisp at the top of his routes. I think that comes from a little bit that I can see his brace get rounded at time. I'll say, like, he showed strong footwork at the line, but I often saw him resorting to hand fighting rather than just trying to win with a clean release. He has those long arms, and I think he just tries to win with those when really he has the footwork to not even have to get caught up in that, and it can slow him down on his route. So I don't know. What was your opinion, Sal? I know I went in most of it there.
I watched his, this, I watched multiple games of his, and we discussed it a little bit today. And then I went back and watched more. And the only conclusion I would come away with is there's really no real weakness in his game.
No.
I mean, all I kept thinking about watching him was heartline.
Yeah.
This guy is so well coached. Everything about his game, he has like a full repertoire of release packages at the line of scrimmage, whether he's in press or whether, they're playing him off man or in zone. He knows exactly what he's doing on every play. He can line up wide. He can line up in the slot. Sometimes he lines up almost in line as a wide receiver blocker. He's outstanding in the little things. You mentioned early on as a blocker, he's phenomenal. I mean, I've seen it. I saw him pancake linebackers, which is crazy, and he's just really a strong guy, and he knows his role in the offense. He knows that it's not just about him. On every play, he's competitive. Every single play, whether he's getting the ball, whether he's not getting the ball, whether it's a pass play or run play, he's competitive on every play. You never see him take a single route off, which sometimes you see with these guys, right? When they're not involved in the play, you'll see them just kind of stop their route after 2 steps. He runs every route at max effort. Mm-hmm. He runs it precisely. And there's just coaching stuff that's evident with him and how good he is. Now, in terms of route running, I agree with you. It's not like the sharpest routes. Mm-hmm. We did say that about Neighbors. We're like, he's not a great route runner yet, but he has the technique to get there and the athletic ability to get there. But he accelerates through the catch point and seems to get faster. I think that's something you can say with Tate.
Yep.
Although he does it a little differently, I think he's good once the ball's in the air and coming towards him. He's already really a big dude with a huge wingspan. I mean, I don't know what his wingspan is going to measure up, but it's going to be something big. He's already 6'3". He positions his body perfectly on throws. His timing is fantastic. His ball tracking is fantastic. He's very hard to beat at the catch point, and that shows that 92% contested catch rate. He's almost impossible to defend at the catch point because he positions himself in such a way where, especially downfield, he's going to high point that football. There, you have like no shot at it. He's too strong to bully. You're not going to catch up with him in the air. There's a little bit of Tate McMillan in him. If you, that was one of the comps I thought about, the way he plays. but just an all around really good receiver. He's not explosive. Like you don't watch him and think, oh, this is this elite explosive athlete, but he's good at everything. And I just think, I kept thinking super high floor receiver. To me, this is at worst, Carnell Tate is a low end wide receiver 1, maybe like a super high end wide receiver 2. I think at his worst, he's that.
Yeah.
But I think he has the potential to be a perennial top 15 type receiver in the NFL. You know, the potential, not necessarily going to always be there, but I think the way he plays football is, you know, it's very impressive. And I think it's sustainable and translatable to the NFL.
Yeah, he's a type of wide receiver is a thing. We're going to talk about a lot of guys, and Carnell Tate is a certain type. Like you mentioned, like T-Mac, you know, he's got a little bit of like a, if George Pickens wasn't a fuckhead to him, you know, he's a true X. It's what he is. And he doesn't have, you know, I don't think he's a guy who would thrive in the slot. I don't think he has like the twitch to really, he could do it. He's a good receiver, but that's not where he would be the most successful. And, you know, one thing that is worth calling out is playing across from Jeremiah Smith. He gets consistent one-on-ones, consistently is left one-on-one. So it's worth mentioning.
How would that be different on the Giants?
Yeah, that's true. That's a fair point.
And that's my point. He's like a perfect complement to Malik Neighbors, if you think of it that way, right? He is not going to be asked to take on double teams a lot with Malik Neighbors here. That's a beauty of this pick for the Giants. He's also an X receiver. You know, he's truly like a legit X receiver on the outside, which complements Neighbors very nicely and gives the Giants kind of what they need. So again, I don't think you necessarily like we'll go through all of these guys. I don't think you come away thinking like, wow, the most impressive or the guy who had the highest highs was Carnell Tate, but he's the guy that consistently, rep after rep, grades out as the overall best receiver. And when you incorporate every factor that we use to grade receivers, there's a reason his grade came out so high, because you just don't see any blemishes in his game.
Yeah, he's the guy like when Matt Harmon comes out with the reception perception on him, I think you're going to see a lot of green. And, you know, there's other guys we're going to talk about who I think you watch and they create some insane amount of separation at times. And Carnell Tate doesn't do that as much. He doesn't create like 10 yards of separation like some of these other guys do. But what he does do is he consistently creates separation. It might not be. Yeah, it might not be blowing these guys away where they're wide open by 10 yards, but he creates it where there's a window, consistently creates a window.
Well, and to the point of like explosiveness, which we discussed that. The one play that I can't unsee that to me shows an explosiveness and another gear is the touchdown against Texas. Because on that route, as you mentioned, like that's the route where he shows the whole package. Has a great release package. He gets inside leverage, and then he just changes tempo, changes gears, and he accelerates into the end zone. And the DB is just left in the dust. The ball's a little underthrown. He adjusts to it, gets his body in position, high points it, and the DB who's caught up at this point still has no shot. I mean, there's just so much on display in that play. When a guy shows you that kind of ability, you can't unsee it. You know it's there, And so, like, that play had me very intrigued. When you put it all together, I would not be upset if the Giants took Carnell Tate in this draft. Now, where they're comfortable taking him, I don't know. But I won't be surprised when the season is over if people are grading Carnell Tate a lot higher than he's being projected to go right now. I think when you look at the type of receiver he is and you project him outward, I mean, I think a top 10 pick for Tate is very much in the cards. That's how I feel.
Absolutely. And I mean, you look at this 3.52 yards per route run, elite number. One thing I wanted to mention, I put these into some of our notes because, these are some things I've looked at in my past and, some of my like fantasy football, like analytics stuff I've looked into. And one thing that comes up is college dominator score. I didn't go that far into it. I just did but basically that's like what percentage of yards and touchdowns you have in the passing game. I just did yards to try to give you a good example. And basically the idea of this is some offenses are going to be a lot more high powered, offenses are very different in college football. So it's basically what percentage of that offense are you a part of, how much you command. And Carnell Tate is obviously somebody who's going to struggle a little bit here because of who he plays across from. And, that makes things more difficult. We've seen that with some of these guys in the past. Typically, the number you want to see get ahead of is about 20%. 30 is where you would love them to be, but 20%. He's 25.4 and playing across from Jeremiah Smith. That's a pretty good number. When we go through these guys, there's going to be better numbers here, but I was pretty happy to see, all these guys kind of checked the box there. So it's just something to keep in mind.
Absolutely. Are you ready to go to number 2?
Yeah, let's do it.
Oh, I'm sorry. We didn't grade him out. I apologize.
Yeah. We almost forgot last week too.
Yeah. Let's go through the grades very fast. Okay. So our grades here are agility. We both gave him a 3. Body control, we both gave him a 4. Hands, we both gave him a 5. That's definitely his strength. Play strength, we both gave him a 4. I thought about giving him a 5 here, really, because he's as strong as they come. Focus and ball tracking, we both gave him a 4. Long speed, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3 here. I think that's my only real difference with you, but maybe I was being a little bit picky. Route running, we both gave him a 4. Release package, we both gave him a 4. Yak ability, we both gave him a 3. I mean, you can see across the board in almost every trait, we viewed him as an above average to, almost like Pro Bowl level trait. Grades out to about a 3.8, high end stuff. And the kind of grade that you would be comfortable taking a guy near the top 10 or around the top 10.
Yeah. I mean, it's, when I watch him, it doesn't scream blue chip to me just because it's not like that wow factor. But at the same time, when you think of the meaning of blue chip, which is essentially a guy who's going to hit,
he can't miss.
Yeah.
He's extremely high floor. It's like a plug and play NFL receiver. All right, let's go to number 2. You ready?
Yep, let's do it.
All right, so I'm going to do number 2 here. Number 2 on our list in terms of just the grading is, really the guy who I think is having the best season in college football right now, and that's Makai Lemon from USC. 5'11", 195 pounds. Makai Lemon is going bananas right now at USC, Monty. His production is through the roof. We'll get into that. You put it in the notes here. He accounts for 36.5% of the passing yardage share in 2025 for USC. I think, is that the highest? I think that's the highest in college football, right? Or if not the highest, it's up there. He is insanely productive. A little bit about Lemon in a scouting report. This guy looks very different on tape than Carnell Tate. Not just that he's shorter than him. I think 5'11" is probably not his real height. He's probably closer to 5'10". But he's explosive, right? When you watch him, literally play after play, he's an explosive, high motor player, high effort on every single play. He's competitive. He's tough. He has a tendency to just find open spots in zone. He finds a good spot for the quarterback to get the ball despite his size. He has great burst off the line of scrimmage. His release packages are outstanding. His footwork is really elite, at the line of scrimmage. And as he's creating separation on his routes, I think you're referring to him as guys who create separation quickly. Very elusive, changes direction on a dime. A lot of tempo in his routes, change of speeds, uses subtle head movements. He uses his hands to fool defenders. He's strong. Despite his size, he's very, very, very tough and competitive. He uses a stiff arm to create yak after contact. Plucks the ball out of the air despite his size. He's a hands catcher. He's a guy who goes up there and gets it. And once he has the ball in his hand, he is really electric. He has a good balance through the point of contact. He breaks a lot of tackles, really good foot speed, finds open space to run through. And he just works well with his quarterback. He's a guy that consistently gets open and presents a good target for his quarterback, again, despite his size. There are some negatives, and they're largely related to his size. He's not the strongest guy in the world. He's not the best blocker in the world. His technique's a little bit sloppy. It's a little bit over-aggressive and zealous. Part of that is, I think, because he's not going to be able to dominate guys blocking with his size, so he just kind of throws his body around a little bit. Sometimes he'll run past, the throwing lane because he can get so quick and explosive. And while he's twitchy and he's quick. He's not like this. I don't think he's a burner. I don't think he's a guy that's not necessarily going to run away off the field, like off the camera from you. And some of that is, I think, just stride length. Again, I don't think he has it. So he's a very good athlete. I don't think he's an elite athlete. But some of his limitations are really just tied to his size and honestly his wingspan. But it doesn't seem to affect him in the ability to track and catch footballs. He makes a lot of plays on the football, and you watch him. And I personally don't think it's fluky. Part of that is, again, body positioning, ball tracking, and just how aggressive he is going up and getting the football. And his hands are just like glue. He goes up there and just snags the ball out of the air. Very tough to bring down. The play that comes to mind is the touchdown. Was it against was it Illinois? He brought back that touchdown late in the game. Just impressive stuff. So you look at his production here. You put it up on the screen. I mean, some of these numbers are crazy. He's the highest graded receiver on PFF this year in college football, 92.1 overall grade. He has had 236 slot snaps, 88 out wide, 71 receptions on 91 targets, 1,090 yards, 15.4 yards per reception, 8 touchdowns, 3.6 yards per route run. That's even higher than Tate. That's elite. 69.2% contested catch rate is really good for anybody. For a guy his size, it's insane. 2.7% drop rate. Outstanding against man coverage. And you start looking at the underlying stats. I mean, he's great at yak. He's great at deep yards. He does kind of everything. So really, really an impressive wide receiver. Honestly, if he was 2 inches taller, I think he'd kind of be easy wide receiver 1 for most people. Yeah. But he's not. So what are your thoughts on him?
I was going to say the same thing as what you said in the last time. Like, if this guy was 6 foot, the way he plays, I think you're talking about like you're coming up with like Justin Jefferson comps for this guy. Just the body positioning he uses, his route running. He's truly just an amazing football player. But he's a smaller guy, and like you said, it doesn't really affect him. But it also, I think, keeps him from what would be an elite wide receiver. Instead of what had the size to, take that and go above and beyond and be elite, it's kind of just like he's so good that it doesn't affect him instead. Like he plays so much bigger than his size. He goes up and comes down with everything. It's very, very impressive. Before I forget it, one thing, you mentioned in the cons was sometimes he has an issue settling into the zones, but what we said in positive, he stays in phase with his quarterbacks. I notice often when the quarterback's rolling out of the pocket, you see this guy, he's following the quarterback. He's like clapping his hands open, like pass it. He's trying to be there for him. But at the same time, it's kind of like, dude, just like get a vision of your surroundings, back into it. There's a soft zone for behind you, back up, wait for it. But instead, I respect it. I love it out of him. He just wants to be there for a quarterback. He wants to help him get him out of trouble. But sometimes you just got to relax and get back and find that zone. So that was one thing I had. But yeah, man, just a really, really good football player at the end of the day. He has more than enough agility and twitch to be an elite route runner. But at the same time, like, I think his route running is better than maybe like his physical twitch actually is. Like, there's some guys who are much twitchier than him, but he's very, very agile. It's not an issue for him. It's more this deep speed, as you mentioned, that's more of a problem. But great hands, really good. Like you mentioned, once he catches the ball, just really hard to take down. He has so much contact balance. Like I said, I've said it so many times. He's a great football player.
Yeah. Should be mentioned. I forgot to mention before. He's also a weapon in the receiving game. He's a really excellent receiver. So in special teams, he offers a lot of value right away as well. So I mean, really high-end football player in many ways. Again, that you're going to have to. He's a guy that you're going to have to see what the measurables come out as. Like specifically the arm length and the wingspan is going to be something scrutinized for this guy at the combine.
Height might come in shorter.
Right. I'd be very surprised if he's 5'11". Yeah. I mean, I think he's probably closer to 5'9", 5'10". But if he's 5'10", I don't think it's as much of an issue. But I know this stuff shouldn't matter, but you can just see it on tape. He doesn't look that tall, and his wingspan, more specifically, doesn't look crazy. But look, I mean, that's what the combine and the pre-draft process scrutiny is about. But on tape, you can't deny the quality of receiver he is. I do think there are guys like him, his prototype, that have just been overlooked because of their size, and people just ignore the production at a high level college program. A guy at his own program, right? Two guys from his program, right? Jourdyn Addison more recently, who did go in the first round, but I think there were people who had questions about his size. Is more about his like frame. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, a similar kind of a player. Guys who work primarily out of the slot, but they kind of do everything, and they're physical, strong guys. Lower body drive is very strong. I mean, I don't think height is the end all be all. I think people focus a little bit too much on that. If your height is not great, if your wingspan is not great, you do have a little bit of a ceiling on you. But in terms of not being able to translate that to the NFL, a lot of that is due to your frame and your leg drive and your strength. And he's got plenty of that. So I'm not too worried about him translating.
Yeah, these are just the type of players who are good in the NFL, man. These are the guys who translate.
Exactly. All right, so let's talk about his grades. He graded in really well for us. Agility, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4. I just loved his body control in the air, but I can see why you would give him a 3.
Yeah,
body control, yeah.
With his agility, it was just, I felt like his route running was phenomenal, and it didn't really affect him, but I didn't think he had like that next level twitch.
That's fair.
I thought it was more his footwork and just nuance.
Body control, definitely a 5 for both of us. Is elite at that. Hands were 4, really excellent hands. No, doesn't drop the ball much. Play strength, we both give him a 2. Just not a strong guy. And I think that's like when you're playing through like traffic and or you're trying to compete for the football, he wins, but I don't think it's just with pure strength, and certainly not as a blocker. Focus and ball tracking, we both gave him a 4. Long speed, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4. I was being generous here, but I even mentioned in my comments that I think that the stride length is a little bit of a limitation. Route running, we both gave him a 4. Package release, we gave him a 4. Yak ability, we both gave him a 4. He graded out as around a 3.77. Really, again, a high-end receiver for us. Outstanding. I think a very good player. I think he's definitely going to the first round. I'd be hard-pressed to see him not go in the first round. I'm curious where in the first round he goes. I don't think he's a guy that's going to go in the top 10. I can see him going in the teens. I can see him sliding to the 20s because of, concerns about his frame and his length.
Yeah, his athleticism. All of it. I just think he could fall.
Right. But I mean, I would be very happy with Lemon. The only issue with him is, again, he's primarily out of the slot. I mean, a guy like, the high end comparison to somebody like him is a guy like Antonio Brown, like these size guys, very similar frame, by the way. He's about the same. I think he's a little taller than AB was, but a very similar kind of big, physical, strong frame. Played a similar style of football, good route runner. Nothing elite, right? Like AB wasn't an elite athlete. He wasn't a burner, but man, he won and won and won and won, and he just kept winning. And I think there is a little bit of that in this guy's game. And I don't quote me on it and say he's going to be Antonio Brown, but my point is, like, there guys like this sometimes translate really well when they have certain physical features that get overlooked. I think that body frame stuff is actually really important. And the lower leg drive and the lower leg strength is very important for a receiver like this, and he's got a lot of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you.
All right. You wanted number 3?
Yeah, let me jump into it. All right, so let me pull it up. Number 3, again, no surprises here. I think this is the last guy that that everyone's kind of expecting and waiting for right here. And honestly, as far as the guys I enjoyed watching, you could argue he was number 1 for me, even though his grades didn't quite come out there. But the next guy we're going to talk about is Jourdyn Tyson, who was a very, very fun watch. Jourdyn Tyson out of Arizona State, 6'2", 200 pounds. He actually was a transfer from Colorado. So, going back into these pass yardage shares that we talk about, this year he's only at 28.6% only. Still really good, but he's been hurt and things like that. It doesn't factor in. Something that's crazy. Last year, 53.2% yardage share of that offense. He had over half of the passing yards were to him. So he was, it was Scat and him. They were the offense last year. but he's dealt with some injuries throughout his career, and that's something to keep in mind. But let's get into what I thought. A route tempo manipulator, just a guy who really, really consistently used tempo on his routes, and I thought something he's really good at. The best way to describe him after the catch was slippery. He was just a very slippery runner who was hard to get your hands on and was able to just kind of slip out of tackles. I thought he displayed deceptive footwork at the stem. I thought he snapped off his breaks with real twitch. I say you can put corners in a blender with his feet when left to one-on-one and off coverage. And on cover, like press, he can, his strength and things like that, he has a little bit more issues. But if you give him off and you leave him one-on-one, he's going to put you into a blender. So smooth, easy movements throughout his route, minimizes contact windows, preventing defenders from pinning him. So that's the one thing. When defenders can get their hands on him, it's been I noticed it's a problem. Like his strength isn't good enough to get off that. But he's really good of not only just using his feet to get around him, he's good at like minimizing the window that defenders can get their hands in on him and trap him. He's good at just keeping that from happening. So that was something I noticed. Maintains speed effortlessly with a smooth gliding stride. Just these really, it's like a deer, just like these real like striding run. Creates instant separation out of his breaks. You can see this guy just create like 10 yards, not 10 yards, but like 10 feet of separation like that, like really quick, immediate separation at times, and displays an excellent understanding of leverage against defenders. So some things I had as a con, he tends to overset defenders, resulting in slower route development. I'll see him get to like the top of the stem, and he's just kind of like trying to set these guys up, back, step, trying to make a move, wait for him to commit one way. And it's like, all right, dude, it's not working. Get through your route. You're delaying this. You got to just commit sometimes. And he just tries to do a little bit too much there sometimes. Doesn't really offer much of anything as a blocker between his size and honestly his effort. He is not really giving the effort to do the blocker. He's not a willing blocker, I'd say, and he just doesn't have the strength to really do it. That was something that really bothered me watching him, is he didn't even look like he really wanted to try out there. His biggest advantage as a blocker or in the run game was him just kind of like setting the corners up and getting them to follow him when they think he's running a route. I said he needs to improve his ability to drift into voids and present a more QB friendly target. He just didn't do a good enough job to me when, like Sam Levitt ran out of the pocket and was trying to extend plays. He didn't feel like he was giving him a chance by, doing kind of a scramble drill play, get open, and, I'll give you a target, so I make a play. I didn't see enough of that. Speed plays, he speed plays, but he won't blow past defenders on pure go routes. He has good enough speed, but it's not like take the top off speed, and struggles to separate as consistently on deeper route concepts like post, corners, and go balls. Just he's better in like the intermediate to short area than he is on those deep concepts. That's what I had. So what was your thoughts on Jourdyn Tyson?
I felt like watching Tyson and the first two guys is that the few things that each of the first two guys left to be desired in their game were things that Tyson had, right?
Yeah.
He was like the perfect combination of the first two guys, right? Physically, athletically. There is no doubt in my mind that he is by far the most physically and athletically gifted receiver in this class. Like, I don't think it's actually particularly close. But there are I won't say deficiencies, but I would say there are some unrealized potential parts of his game right now that I think, like, when you look at a guy like Tate, who looks like a complete package of a receiver, just super high floor, right? Like, he's plug and play out of the box kind of a receiver who does all the things that Tyson does. He just doesn't do it with that same level of athleticism or speed or explosiveness. Or like even the separation ability and things like, the high motor stuff, the footwork that you see from Lemon. Tyson has that, but Lemon can't run away from people the way Tyson can. Lemon can't. He's good at the catch point, but he doesn't have that same elite level of footwork down the field. he doesn't have the ability to play basketball like, post up guy on the boundary. And these are things that Tyson has. And I just feel like he's a guy that I don't think he's as safe a prospect coming out as the other two right now. But if I had to bet on one guy, like saying, if you ask me, pick anybody from this class that has a potential to be a top 5 receiver in the NFL, the only guy from this class that I would pick to be a top 5 receiver in the NFL would be Jourdyn Tyson. Because I think he has all the traits of those types of players, right? And if he puts it all together, there's nothing that can hold him back. If you want to see a game where, like, just the most fun game to go back and watch, especially as Giant fans, go back and watch 2024 Arizona State versus Utah. I told Monty, go back and watch it. Just watch the game and enjoy it, because it's literally the Cam Scadaboo and Jourdyn Tyson show. Like rep after rep after rep. They're just alternating like haymakers in that game. And you see Tyson's his explosiveness like on display. His ability to run away from guys is crazy. Like once that ball's in his hand, he is like an elite running back flying away from the field.
Really good vision.
Outstanding. His route running is exceptional, very technically sound in that way. But when I say that he leaves some stuff to be desired, it's just like the little things, right? Like you mentioned the scramble drills, right? And I think not that I think Sam Levitt is incredible, although he's apparently going to transfer. But Sam Levitt plays a style of football that's not too dissimilar to what Jackson Dart does right now for the Giants, right? There's a lot of, read the field. You don't see it, start scrambling, look for somebody down the field. And I mean, some of it I thought was Sam Levitt just kind of putting his eyes down and not looking for targets, but there were plays where he's looking down the field. And I think Tyson is so locked in on running his route that he's not necessarily looking back to find the quarterback. Yeah. Right. And I want somebody who's going to know and have a feel for where his quarterback is, especially with a guy like Dart, who's going to break the pocket, right, and come back to him, because Tyson has the ability to fly back, present a target, and pick up huge chunk plays with Dart. So that's the kind of thing. Like if we do draft him, and trust me, I'd be thrilled if we took Tyson. I want to see things like that improve. And these are not like huge criticisms, but I think it's fair to point out that it's just stuff he doesn't do consistently well right now. And I think that shows in his production numbers, right? Like he doesn't have the same yards per route run as the other guys. The other guys are 3.5, 3.6. Jourdyn Tyson, I think, is around 2.2 or something like that, or 2.27 yards per route run. His contested catch rate is 42.9. It's respectable, but you would expect it to be higher, right? You would expect him in the 50, 60% range. The other guys were like 90%, 70%, he doesn't drop a lot of footballs. He's 1.7% there. He's excellent with the ball in his hand. He catches everything that he gets his hands on for the most part. Outstanding, like you said, against man coverage. He gets guys in a blender. He wins consistently. He's very productive. He does it all, but I just think there are things he has to clean up in his game, and that's why I think he graded out a little bit lower than the other guys for us.
Yeah. You want to guess who my comp was for him? It was the guy who came out recently. We both liked him a lot.
Are you recently before we started doing this? Are you going to say Jordan Addison?
Yep. Taller Jordan Addison. He reminded me a lot of.
Yeah, I can see it. Although I thought Addison was more of a quarterback's best friend type when he coming back to the football. But he didn't have the physical gifts. I mean, Tyson has physical gifts that Addison just doesn't have. But yeah, I can see the play style being a lot like Addison.
Yeah. So and the one thing also to mention, I alluded to it earlier, is the injury history that this guy's had, and it hasn't been the same injuries, which is the good thing. But back in 2022, he tore his ACL and MCL 9 games in the season. So he only played 3 games the next year because he's still dealing with that. Then 2024. Right at the end of the year, he broke his collarbone, requiring surgery. And then this year, he's been dealing with a hamstring injury that's kept him out of games. So, it's every single year, seemingly, he deals with an injury. And it's something that you can't ignore.
I mean, I agree. Now, I will say, I think Tyson's probably going top 10 because at least top 15. I think the physical gifts are hard to ignore. Here, right? I mean, when you're again in the top 10, you are looking for blue chippers, and blue chipper again. We're going to define as guys. I don't know if I would call them a blue chipper, but they're basically defined as guys who you think can't miss, right? Can't miss, productive NFL high level players, and I think that there's a little bit of floor risk here because of injuries, because of some of the stuff we just discussed. But you're also looking for a guy who can become an all-pro, at that level, and he has all-pro potential. So I do think ultimately he lands in the top 10. I don't know where. And I think he's going to end up being the top receiver taken off the board. But like we're saying, he's not grading out exactly that way, but it's going to be a tough decision, right? Let's say the Giants are drafting 6th, right? When the draft comes around, we're not trading down, and both Tyson and Tate, throw in Lemon, obviously, the 3 of them are on the board, and they want a receiver from one of them. They look at the board, and there's nobody they want other than one of the receivers. I'm very interested to see what they value, right? Are they going to go for the upside swing in Tyson, or are they going to go for the more short-handed, perfect complement to Malik Neighbors and Tate? It's going to be an interesting discussion, to see how they do this. I think in the early part of the season, it was a pretty easy slam dunk. Jourdyn Tyson is number 1. But as the season has gone on and you see tape on all of these guys, they're all really great, but I think it's a lot closer than people realize.
Yeah. And, the numbers haven't been amazing this year. I mean, a part of that's definitely quarterback play. Sam Levitt got hurt. And, you look at his yards per route run, 2.27, it's good. It's not elite. But, when he had Sam Levitt, he was up at 3 yards per route run. So that's something to keep in mind in good context. 42.9 contested catch rate, good. 1.7 drop rate, amazing. Grade versus man coverage, great. So there's certainly a lot to like, and then there's some stuff that's more So really, really, really good football player, though. I agree with the high upside. I don't know where he's gonna go, though, man. It is a weaker draft class up top, so top 10 wouldn't surprise me at all. But like I said, he reminds me of Jordan Addison. Jordan Addison went in the 20s, so I don't know.
24, 1 pick before us, right? 1 pick before Deonte Banks. Same level of player in the NFL, So let's go through the grades real quick on Tyson. Agility, we both talked about it. We both gave him a 5. His agility is elite.
Yep.
Body control, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4 here. Hands, we both gave him a 4. Play strength, we both gave him a 2. I think he could play a lot stronger than he does. There's no reason for him to play like a 2, but he does play like a 2 with play strength. Focus and ball tracking, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4. I like his ball tracking personally, but I can see why you would give him a 3 here.
To me, and it goes back a little bit to the body control and stuff like that. To me, I saw a really good route runner, a really good guy with the ball after the catch, and just really good athlete. But I saw a reliable hands catcher, but I didn't see a guy who was an elite receiver. If that makes any sense. He just,
I get it.
He doesn't go up and track and battle for balls like some of these other guys do.
Long speed, you gave him a 3. I gave him a 4. It was hard for me to not see some of the reps he had, Monty, where he's just running away from guys like a gazelle. Route running, we both gave him a 4. Very good route runner. Release package, we both gave him a 4. Excellent footwork at the line of scrimmage. And yak, we both gave him a 4. So I mean, he's grading out high in the traits that kind of project if you're trying to project out a high-end NFL wide receiver, right? But there's some pitfalls here when you break it down, and that risk has to be figured into how you decide you want to value him on your draft board. So he comes in at as our third highest graded receiver, but I'm not 100% certain that I wouldn't take him. That's my point, right? If I'm given all 3 guys, I kind of lean towards the traits guy, right? I'm allured by the traits, the size, the speed, the whole thing. So it's going to be interesting to see how this plays out in the pre-draft process.
And to your point, maybe for us, it makes a lot of sense to go a guy like Carnell Tate because we have a guy like Malik Neighbors. But for a team that doesn't have Malik Neighbors, Jourdyn Tyson becomes a lot more intriguing.
Yep. I'm going to ask you to do me a favor here. Would you mind going back to back here and take number 4? I want to do number 5, the way it graded out.
Yeah. You want to do the bigger guy last?
That's okay. I want to do that freak.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can do that. All right, because I actually really, really enjoyed watching the fourth guy we're talking about here, so I'll happily do him. So the fourth guy here was Denzel Boston out of Washington. So he's a guy that a lot of people have said to watch. I actually haven't watched much Washington this year, so I didn't really know what to think of him. But 6'4", 209 pounds, a really, really big player. He, actually was, we'll get into it. He was the one guy who kind of reminded me of, what Jourdyn Tyson could do with his separation. I don't think anybody really came close, and this was the only one who had some of that, but we'll get into it. Before I get into it, I'll say 28% passing yard share in 2025. So again, over that 20, almost up to 30. That's at next level, but pretty good there. But this is what I have. He effectively manipulates corners with a head and upper body movement to create open windows. Really good with like the head fakes and the shoulder fakes to, get a cornerback lead and create leverage and get an open window. Quick plant to change direction, create separation from defenders, whether it's horizontally or coming back to the quarterback. He can really kind of like stop on a dime and go. Like really, especially for a guy as tall as he is, I thought he had really, really good change of direction ability. I thought he uses leverage technique to sustain blocks, and when called upon, he really good leverage and technique and blocks. And he also a guy who I thought was just a really like aggressive blocker. I felt like he was a guy who really wanted to impose his will on the defenders and wanted to go out there and be a blocker. Quick, precise footwork to gain leverage and create separation off the line of scrimmage. I said his hands are dependable. He made like difficult catches look routine at times. Shows good awareness of zone coverage. I thought he consistently found soft spots and zones to settle in. He's a really good job. Just like when he found that zone, just sit down and settle into it for his quarterback. Their quarterback stinks and could never get it to him, but he did a good job of getting there for him. He has really good length. You mentioned that. I mean, obviously him being 6'4", I thought it allowed him to reach balls others can't create. Another way, just get separation and leverage. Uses long stride to set tempos up in his routes effectively. I thought, his long strides really like let him tempo routes well. It's hard to kind of tell what speed he's going at with it. And he can really take off when he needs to. And uses body positioning to shield off defenders and secure contested catches. Really, really liked Denzel Boston way more than I expected to. With cons though, does not consistently gain extra yards once the ball in his hands. He really kind of ball gets in his hands, and usually he's tackled not much after that. He can do a little bit after catch, but not a whole lot. Another guy occasionally will round off his routes, pecting the sharpness, timing of it. And he's not really a burner. He more relies on technique and timing rather than speed to, create separation. But just a really technically sound physical wide receiver. If we don't go wide receiver round 1, I would love to target Denzel Boston round 2. I think he'd be a great compliment to Malik Neighbors. What was your thoughts?
I think you nailed it. I mean, another high floor wide receiver, very smooth, just smooth every rep. I think you watch him over. He's almost boring to watch.
Yeah.
I say this about guys I like, by the way, like when they're bored, because they're just kind of doing everything technically correct, and there's not much to see there. Where he wins is really just, I think he runs pretty precise routes for the most part. He has a tendency down the field to round it out a little bit, but for the most part, he's very good off the line of scrimmage. Good footwork. I don't think he's as strong at the line of scrimmage as I'd like to see him be. Sometimes again, you would think a guy of his size and strength, you would imagine, and would beat press pretty easily, and he struggles sometimes against press, which was a little surprising. Guys, whereas some of the smaller guys like Lemon, you see them like burst through it, they hand fight their way out of it. I'd like to see a little bit more of that from him, but overall, I just think he's a good receiver. He's a big target. He is what he is. He is a traditional X. I don't think he offers a lot of value doing anything more than being a traditional X. Big target, good down the field receiver, good boundary guy, solid hands, catches the ball away from his frame a lot with his hands. He's a good hands catcher. All of these guys are good hands catchers. And like you said, he's a he's not like an explosive burst guy, but he's a run away from you with stride length guy. Stride length matters, right?
Yeah.
Like this is where it matters, like how tall you are, how long your legs are, because these guys who get a little bit of a runway, who are this tall and this big, they just start taking off, and it's hard to catch them because their strides are just covering way more ground. And he's not explosive, but I'm willing to bet that his GPS speeds reach pretty high levels just because of the way he runs, and his stride length. So just a solid X receiver. I think, if you're targeting a guy like Tate, for example, but you don't want to take Tate in the top 10, but you're comfortable with a lesser version of a similar style receiver, I think that's kind of how I view Boston. All right. That's what I look at him as.
He's almost like a worse but combined version of Tate and Tyson in some ways.
Yeah. He's a good player.
He's interesting because, and I don't mean that, like, a lot of times you say, like, with big guys you play small. I mean, you mean that in like a negative way, but I almost don't mean a negative way. I mean it in the sense of, like, he is a guy who athletically can move, like, agilely, like agile wise, like a smaller guy who's smaller, and he's a guy who just, prepares to play as if he isn't 6'4" and doesn't have the length to make plays that he can. So he's good at boxing out and things like that. But he just happens, like, he's not a guy who's just like knows he's big and is constantly going up for balls, but he's very safe and does use his length. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but I don't know if you know what I mean.
No, I get it. I know exactly what you mean. Like, he just, ball goes his way, he's probably catching it. There's a very good chance he's coming out with that football because he uses his size to position himself well and get the football. It's just that, I think part of the reason he's a less than enjoyable watch is because he doesn't possess elite explosiveness. He doesn't have like the super high end traits that you're looking for in the top tier wide receivers. And I don't think he projects as a top tier wide receiver at the NFL level. I think he projects as a very solid wide receiver too. I think that's kind of maybe in his best years a low end wide receiver 1, right? But I think a very, very solid wide receiver 2. Right now, people are projecting him in the first round. I don't feel comfortable taking him in the first round personally. I think he's more of a day 2 guy. But so these guys, they're receivers, they tend to go earlier than you would expect, right? But that's kind of where I am with him. I really like him, but I don't love him.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher. If I had a late first round pick, I would take him. I think he's a very safe player, and I think he's a very good player. I really think that he fits a little bit of the type of wide receivers I like, and it's a surprise because I don't expect a guy of his size to be that type of player I like.
Yeah, I get you. It's an interesting player to consider. I mean, again, we have the advantage of having Neighbors, so
yeah.
Neighbors being so versatile and so freaking good, you can kind of take whatever you want. You can go for another super high end number 1. You can go for a safe number 1. You can go for number 2. It all works. You just need somebody in here. But to me, it's not that any of these guys don't work with the Giants. It's just a matter of where you're comfortable taking them. And I think that's what it comes down to.
Yep. And before we get into grades, here's some of the stats and grades that PFF has for anybody who's listening and not watching. 87.6 receiving grade, 2.42 yards per route run. So very good. Not elite, but very, very good. 1.9% drop rate. All these guys can catch, man. All of these guys can catch. Yep. Contested catch rate 66.7. Again, great. Grade versus man coverage 89.3 elite. So really, really good numbers.
Yep. All right, let's go to the last one.
Well, let's talk about his
grades. I'm sorry. Oh, I keep forgetting the grades. Yeah. Let's pull up his grades. All right. We both gave him a 4 in agility. We both gave him a 3 in body control. We both gave him a 4 in hands. We both gave him you gave him a 4 in play strength. I gave him a 3. I'm trying to think why I gave him a 3. I think it had to do with some of his blocking. I think he's a good blocker. I didn't see him like dominate, but maybe that's why I gave him a 3.
See, I loved his blocking. I thought he really dominated guys at times.
Interesting. We viewed it differently. Okay. Focus and ball tracking, we both gave him a 3. Long speed, we both gave him a 3. Route running, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. Again, I thought he was good, not great. I thought he was kind of an average route runner, but you thought he was better.
Mm-hmm.
Release package, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. and Yak, we both gave him a 3. So I was a little bit lower on him. Maybe I was looking at it through the bias of him just not being explosive, and maybe I need to go back and watch him a little bit more. You're definitely a lot higher in him, but either way, we both end up thinking of him as pretty like a solid prospect.
Yes, for sure.
Yeah. All right, let's do number 5. Let me pull him up. So the reason I asked you to do this is because number 5 is just someone who I enjoyed watching. But there are things to talk about in his game. And number 5 in this out of our first 5, and this again, I think there are going to be guys who grade higher than him personally when we do the next batch. I'm just giving you a disclaimer on that. But this guy's worth talking about because he's getting a lot of buzz, and it's David Bell out of Chris Bell out of Louisville. So Chris Bell is a really interesting player. If you guys have not watched him, he has gotten some interesting comps. He was a former 3-star recruit. Let me pull up his stuff here. He hit 22 miles per hour in game, according to Real Analytics. He accounts for a 35.7% passing yardage share in 2025 in Louisville, so comparable to Makai Lemon. This is an athletically and physically gifted player, Monte. And I think you could argue he's second only to Jourdyn Tyson in this class when it comes to gifts physically.
Yes.
He can really hit the burners when he wants to. And he has multiple gears. And when he wants to, when he gets some space, he's surprisingly able to accelerate. And I think that this stands out when you watch him on tape. And the only other thing that really stands out, though, and it stands out a lot, is his physicality. He's a big, strong dude. Squares up like a power forward, takes guys out. Physical player, both down the field and in the short area. Big, strong legs, big leg drive, strong upper body, very tough in hand fighting, tough at the catch point, competitive, physical, plucks the ball out of the thin air, just an imposing human being, really good at yak. Like really impressed. Like if he was a tight end, you'd be in freaking love with this guy.
Yeah.
Right. Because he's a yak machine. But there are some limitations to him. He does struggle sometimes with his release off the line of scrimmage. He can be a little bit, for as explosive as he is, he can be a little slow getting going out of his routes. Right. Have you noticed that? Like,
it's like this build up speed as he takes these false steps. It's very weird.
Exactly. He looks like he's not fully coached, right? Like he looks like he's not, like there are things about his game, like the nuances of the game are not there. He doesn't have a great release package. He doesn't have the subtle head movements. He doesn't have like the ankle flexion that you want to see sometimes. He doesn't do the little things that create separation. He separates, but he does it with just raw athletic ability and nothing else. And it's a little inconsistent. Sometimes guys are draped on him. Sometimes he's running away from them. And quite frankly, he is a guy that is, for his size and his strength. Did I mention his size?
I don't think he said it.
Oh, okay. He's a big fucker. He's 6'2", 220. He's a big dude,
AJ Brown type size.
Yeah, he's built like a tank. Now he looks like AJ Brown, but he is not used like AJ Brown.
No,
he's used like a smaller version. And I can shout out to Jabri who made this comp. When I watched his tape more, I agreed with it. A lot of his game looks a lot like South Carolina Deebo Samuel, because his routes are very much like over and over again. The one route they keep running at Louisville that they use him on, and it's shocking to me that people don't defend this, is like shallow crosser. Did you notice that? Like that's like the one thing he's like, if he's running that shallow crosser, the ball is going to him. There's nobody else on that team that's getting the football. If he's running a shallow crosser, he's getting it. And that's where you see him catch the ball like maybe 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, 6 yards past the line of scrimmage, and then he just takes off. And that's when, if he has even a little bit of room there, he's gone. Like he is hard to catch, and man, is he tough to get down to the ground in the open field when he's moving. He's so big and strong. Trying to tackle this guy is just a really tough task for most defensive backs, linebackers. He just bullies through people, and people have comped him to Anquan Bolden. I even was saying there are elements of his game where he looks a lot like Hakeem Nicks when he came out of college, where he's just has the ball and he's just tough to fucking bring down. He's just bouncing off of people and going down the field. But where he's different than those guys is his route running is really raw. Like it's just not. I don't see it.
Really
Like
raw.
I don't know if that's an ability thing or it's just how they use him, man. But you don't see him run a full route tree at all.
No.
It's just like 2 or 3 routes that he runs consistently, and that's something like it's going to have to be answered for in the pre-draft process, because if he ran a more complete route tree and he showed you the ability to do that, then we're talking about him along the lines of Jourdyn Tyson, right? Like the physical athletic specimens. You'd be discussing AJ Brown as a comp to him then, if he could do that, right? Because he's so physical and big, but it's just such a limited utilization of this guy. Now, to be fair, Miller Moss is awful. Shout out Rad. Miller Moss he's a rough watch, actually makes Tyler Shuck look good from Louisville tape. But it's still like it's a very limited route tree, but there's intriguing stuff. So I can see in my mind, he's a guy that as a floor prospect, like is basically like a super big physical gadget type, along the lines of a Deebo Samuel. But if he could ever develop the full route tree and some of the nuances of playing wide receiver, you're talking about sky's the limit in terms of potential here. So that's my take on him. What do you think?
Yeah. I wanted to like Chris Bell. Like I really wanted to like him. He's so much to want to like about him. He has that frame. He has that speed. He makes some crazy plays, on every Saturday. But I am a guy who likes my route runners. I think route running translates. It's something that I can't be able to create separation is important to me. And he doesn't do that. And it's hard for me. I really wanted him to be the guy that I was like, yep, this is the guy. We're going to take him round 2. He's going to be Anquan Bolden. He's going to be Hakeem Nicks. He's whatever. But
yeah, he doesn't have it on tape. Yeah.
He needs a lot of work, man. That's the reality of it. Alex said in the chat, is he Xavier Legette or is he AJ Brown? It's certainly in that equation.
He's way more Xavier Legette. Yeah. I mean, AJ Brown was a pretty refined route runner when he came out. He's not anywhere near that.
He reminds me one comp he reminds me a little bit of Trey Harris last year, because Trey Harris, he lacked that route tree in that Ole Miss.
But Trey Harris's route tree was one that was perfect for a guy his size and speed. It was much more of a vertical down the field kind of thing, and he did separate.
Yeah, and it felt like you could see him being a better route runner in the NFL. I don't know how much I see it from Chris Bell, where I'm like, yep, it shows there that he can be a better route runner. I think he lacks some agility to his game. He's physical. He runs better after the catch. It's not like, but as far as from like a route running standpoint, I don't see it. And you mentioned it. The one thing that drove me crazy watching him was him off the line of scrimmage. Like he took these false steps. He'd double step at the line of scrimmage, like not like dancing, like just took a bad step. Bad technique. He's slow. He came off the line. It's almost like he came off the line so slow, so often I couldn't tell when he was running his route or when he was blocking. And in a weird way, the reason I couldn't tell is because he was a very good blocker who like lined these guys up. He kind of came up to him slow, lined him up, and then he'd like hammer him and just drive him through. But like the way he approached these receivers to make sure that he was squaring up blocking is how he started every route. Like he was just kind of like a little jog off the line of scrimmage.
You know what's interesting? He's from Mississippi, right? So like you almost feel like Mississippi State would have wanted him because he's like their prototype, But I mean, just he goes to Louisville. He just doesn't develop. I think he's still pretty young. I mean, I think there's room here, but I'm kind of with you on the route tree stuff, which is that like we can say all we want. Like if he develops a route tree, we can see an elite player, but the truth be told, Monty, how often do guys develop a route tree in the NFL when they don't have one in college? Right.
And the guys who do are usually the guys who have the athleticism where you can see it. Like a guy like Wan'Dale Robinson didn't really have a route tree in college, but it didn't really. I don't think it surprises people he developed one with like the athleticism that he showed.
Right. I mean, one of the biggest arguments you and I had, but before we started this show, which is when we kind of became friends, was arguing on the timeline about Jalen Hyatt,
Mm-hmm.
and how, you liked him because you were tantalized by the speed and the traits, and
Mm-hmm.
you famously, Lance Zierlein, we had cars, and I was banging the drum against you guys and saying,
Mm-hmm.
I don't see it, like, no route tree. This guy's a go route merchant, I just don't see it here. I mean, take him if you want to use him as a go route merchant, and that's it, and that's fine, but don't expect more.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, like, you're seeing it with the Giants, like, he just never developed anything resembling a route tree, and his career here is probably just about over. I think, definitely hasn't done a damn thing since he got drafted. I'm kind of done personally with investing anything more than like a day 3 pick on a guy who doesn't have a route tree. That's kind of where I am, right? And I really, like, I'm with you. I wanted to love Bell. And part of me is like, this guy, he could end up the next Deebo Samuel and really be a problem in the NFL. I can see it, but again, guys like this do come out, right? Like Savion Williams was, that physical specimen. Deebo Samuel, Malachi Corley. Some guys hit, some guys don't, right? But you want to see more of a route tree from these guys, or odds are they get to an NFL training camp and they're asked to run routes and they can't do it. And then they end up low on the depth chart. That's what happens to these guys, right? They get buried on depth charts because their guys are just more reliable, running a more complete route tree. Then how do you develop if you're not playing, right? And that's the problem with guys like this in the NFL. If you're not able to be used on a consistent basis at the top of the depth chart because you're limited in your route tree, you're going to get buried and you're not going to develop because you're not going to get playing time.
Yeah.
And that's the fear with a guy like Bell. So you want to see more from him. And it is a worry because people are talking about him with like first round. I definitely do not see a first round player.
No.
Like, no way. So I do think somebody's going to take him in the second. Just they're going to be tantalized by the strength, the raw athletic gifts.
Yeah, some like Shanahan tree guy. Just get him in a space and let's see what we can do with him.
Yeah, but I mean, other than Deebo, who have those guys actually taken like that? Like, think about it. Like, they don't normally take guys like. I mean, Deebo was like the one guy that got taken. Like
Corley.
No, but he got taken by the Jets.
It's Salah.
I guess, yeah. And what did they do with Corley? Got buried on the depth chart right away. They couldn't use him. They didn't know how to use him, right? And I think that's the fear with a guy like this. So I want to see a little bit more from him. He's almost like a guy that I kind of want to see him go back to school. Like, does he have eligibility left? I think he does, right?
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of want to see what I think he has like one more year of eligibility. It's his 4th year. So he could go back. Did he redshirt? Yeah, I think he redshirted his freshman year. Actually, no, he didn't really play. So I don't know if it counts. Actually, no, they didn't redshirt. He did not redshirt. It's interesting. Maybe he doesn't have eligibility, but I thought he should have one. But I mean, he's the kind of guy I'd like to see go work with a Heartline, Like, I would love to see him go work with a real wide receivers coach who could work on his technique and see if he can get better. But he's probably going to declare, and then I think you have to kind of take what you get with him. I'm personally not super interested in it. I wanted to really want this guy like you did, but the route tree stuff bothers me.
Yeah, and it's not like this is DK Metcalf, where it's just like they're too big, too athletic to not take a shot at. Like, he's a good athlete. He's a big player. He fits the prototype, but like he fits the prototype, not the absolute biggest freaks we've ever seen come through.
Exactly. Let's go through his grades real quick. Agility, we both gave him a 3. Body control, we both give him a 3. Hands, we both give him a 4. He's a good hands catcher. Play strength, he's a bull. We both give him a 5. Focus and ball tracking, 3. Long speed, you gave him a 4. I gave him a 3. I probably could have given him a 4 here because I mentioned that he can start running away from guys. Route running, 2 was probably generous, to be honest, from both of us. We don't give a lot of 1s. Release package, we both gave him a 2. Again, could have given him a 1 here. And Yak, we gave him a 4. He's really good with the ball in his hand, knocks guys over. And I think that's his ability. But this is a day 2 type guy to me. So
yeah,
those are the 5.
I touch him until day 3, like you said.
Yeah, exactly. I think he'll go day 2, but I don't want to use our second round pick on him, you
Nope.
know? So those are our first 5. Again, not necessarily our top 5. We just picked 5 to go over. We're breaking this into 2 segments. There's a guy somebody mentioned in the chat that will definitely be in the next episode. A couple of guys, as you guys mentioned in the chat, that'll be in the next episode, who I personally think are going to grade out a lot higher than some of the last couple of guys we went over.
At least the last one. I really like Boston.
We'll see. But there's some really good players left, and that's the beauty of this class. There's still a lot of good players left, and we'll go over 5 more. And the Giants are going to have to figure this out. Like we have to go through guys here because the Giants are going to have to figure out where they prioritize the wide receiver position here. I think it's probably the kind of thing they're going to have to hit on day 1, honestly. But then you never know. Like, are you going to say no to a Godfather offered trade to go down? What if you have another blue chip can't miss prospect sitting there, like a Reuben Bain, or a Marvel Reese, his name has come up a bunch, or a guy like even Caleb Downs. I mean, like, there are guys that are going to be there.
What if we don't want it to happen. What if you let Jermaine Illuminor walk and suddenly
Maui, and then Maui Goa as the guy, right? And, or Spencer Fano. Like, depends on what you value, right? Like, what do you want to do with that first round pick? A lot of it is going to depend on obviously the offseason stuff, but before the free agency stuff, and that's going to depend on who the general manager is, the head coach, what their priorities are. But anyway you slice it, they're going to have to solve for wide receiver 2, and quite frankly, I don't think they can wait past that second round pick. They're going to have to figure out a solution as fast as possible. But, depending on how the board flies, they might have to, they might have to be creative here. So we're going to go over as many of these guys as we possibly can. Before we close it out, let's go over some of the games coming up this week as we're getting towards the end of the college football season. So have you taken a look at the schedule?
I haven't. So go ahead and start us out. I'll pull it up.
All right. So tomorrow night, if you want to see him play, Bell and his Louisiana team is playing. I'm sorry. Sorry, he's not playing. I saw Louisville. It's Louisiana, Arkansas State. So forget that. Friday night, you have Florida State, NC State. That's an interesting game if you have nothing to do on Friday night. Rutgers has at Ohio State on Saturday. That's a 12:00 game for those who are Rutgers Jersey people. A&M has Samford. That's no fun. They'll beat them by 70. Missouri at Oklahoma is kind of an interesting game. Missouri's been a tough SEC team for a lot of the other SEC opponents. Oklahoma coming off a big win against Alabama. This one's in Norman. That should be a tough contest. Louisville is playing at SMU this week, so that's an interesting game. So if you want to see a little bit of Bell, he'll be in that game, and that's a 12:00 game. Just scrolling through this list.
There's a 3:30 that stands out to me.
Okay, I was just going through the ones, but yeah, there's a big 3:30 game. Obviously, USC Oregon. That's a big grudge match. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about, right?
Yeah, a lot of good prospects in this.
Right. So one guy we went over already. One guy will go over next week from USC. 2 USC receivers that are going to be near the top of this class in that game, worth watching against Oregon. And I'm not seeing a lot of other big games in the afternoon. I think we kind of have to scroll to the evening games.
Yeah, Texas, Arkansas might be okay. I know Arkansas's quarterback Taylor Green has been really good this year.
Yeah. Right. Not
Houston,
a lot.
TCU should be a good game.
Yeah, even the evening games are not wonderful, to be honest. Like when you're looking at them, there's nothing too exciting here. Yeah, I mean, I think the big game is just clearly that 3:30 game, USC versus Oregon. That's probably the best game of the week, and it's dead smack in the middle of the day. And then it's just kind of pick your poison. Who do you want to see play? So I'll be honest, nothing too exciting here. Might be a night to go to the movies. I mean, Washington is playing UCLA at 10:30. So if you want to watch that to see
once you get back from the movies,
watch Denzel Boston at 10. Exactly. Skip the 7:00 games because there's really not much here going on. Go watch Arizona, watch USC Oregon, go to the movies, have dinner with your family or your loved one or whatever. Come back, get back in your house, let everybody go to sleep, and 10:30 turn on Washington, UCLA, and watch Denzel Boston. There you go. There's your
Bang,
plan.
that's the plan.
All right. Giants have who are we playing this week?
Lions.
Oh my God.
They're gonna run for 300 yards on us.
Yeah, if you have Jahmyr Gibbs in fantasy, the man, like you're gonna win this week.
Yeah.
You know, so it's gonna be nasty on the carpet in Detroit. This is nasty. You know, and the Lions coming off a bad loss to the Eagles where they couldn't get their offense going. I just feel like they're gonna run it down our throats.
But we
Shane
should have
Hornets-
Dart back.
We should have. We'll see.
Yeah.
I mean, he's making his way through protocol. We'll see. I think tomorrow will be telling. You know, I mean, meaning Thursday in practice will be telling. But we'll see. But it's going to be a tough game. I mean, this is a tough game for the Giants. You know, it's hard to imagine them winning this game. I'll be honest. If the one thing I'll say about this game, if Joe Schoen is maybe not on the most solid footing, the Giants getting, you know, like just boat raced out of this game might be one of those things that can actually start, you know, telling the tale of his fate, right? Like this is one where I don't think it would be acceptable for the Giants to get completely demolished. And this is setting up for the Giants to be just massacred. So let's see what happens. If they put up a good fight, okay. But if they get destroyed, you know, there's going to be a lot more talk of Joe Schoen going into next week.
Every week it's going to get worse until we start winning football games.
That's the reality. Thank you guys for being here the whole time with us. One of our longer episodes again. Getting back to our old ways here. Before you go, please like and subscribe. Hit that like button, subscribe, comment. We're getting closer to 1,000 subs. That helps us algorithmically on YouTube. You can listen to us, obviously, on Apple, on Spotify as well. Share the episode on Twitter if you get a chance, or whatever social media platform you do use. You can find us on Twitter. You can reach out to us at He's a Giant Pod. You can reach me at Queens_guy. You can reach Monty at MONTECRI5TO. Until we see you guys next week and go through part 2 of this wide receiver series, enjoy your weekend and go Giants.
Go Giants.